but also wants to eat a pizza, right? He's suppressing his desire for the pizza for his higher order desire, which is to be sexy for June or whatever, right?
Hmm.
You think that makes sense, or would you say that?
Uh,
Would you disagree?
yeah, that makes sense. It's a
That's how I view it. Like
it's a common
I'm a
position.
complete determinist.
Yeah, so you would agree with me that the compatibilist is just like messing with language, that they're not talking about freedom as a normal person means. They're really a
And I
determinist.
don't, I don't, yeah, I don't mean I don't mean to be offensive to like philosophers, but usually when I talk to a philosopher, it's usually just word games, you know. Um, Compatibilism, like you just said, it's just determinism. It's really nothing different. They're gonna be every single hypothetical you ask a compatibilist, they're gonna come to the same conclusion as the determinist. You just ask them any hypothetical about, you know, the topic at hand. They're gonna reach the same conclusions. They're gonna have to defend the same positions. This is the same thing.
Right, right. So then the only one who's offering like anything alternative is the libertarian. You know, the one who says like, well, in order to have free will, I need to be like unconditioned, like by all physicality, by all even internality. There can be nothing given. It all has to come from my will. And obviously, the problem with those
E-
people is that then they have no basis to say why you would will anything.
Exactly. You need something. This is this is actually I've never really looked at it from this way. This is so true. If you've never been exposed to any externality, how will your own will manifest, right? You can't just have you can't just have a desire, will a desire if you've never been exposed to something that's desirable, right? Experienced um if you've never experienced happiness, will you desire it? That's another good question, you know? Do you
Yeah.
think do you think that that's the case?
I think it's even worse. I think it's not even just a matter of external things. If you just don't have desires, if you don't have reasoning at all, you don't have any motivations. Therefore, why would you choose anything? Why would you act in any way? There just is, you aren't anything. Like that is not a subject at all. So that's the problem with the libertarian concept, and in that way, the libertarian concept is quite literally nonsense. Like it's not that it's beyond my
You
understanding.
know,
No, like there is nothing to be understood there.
I've always thought this way, but I've never seen someone put it into like words like this. I've always felt like this, in my head, like, what even are you talking about when you say free will? There's nothing left if you remove everything, you know, uh, external to you. How will you have a will at that point? That's,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you would say that you're a determinist then?
Nope.
So what would you describe yourself as?
So my position is not any position you've ever heard of. So
Okay.
the problem of determinism is that something else is conditioning, causing, or making you what you are. So, and that's why it's a problem on freedom. It's like a slave. Something else is forcing me to engage in something rather than me being the source or motivation for my action. The first requirement of like freedom meaning anything requires that
But
whatever
is
it
this
is proceeds from me.
But is this a philosophical critique, or is this just a critique for how to live your life better?
Now,
That's,
it is a philosophical consideration. It is about what you are in actuality. It's not just a hypothetical maybe or a way, like, it's better to believe that you're free. No, it's not that.
mm.
So,
Could you elaborate a bit? I'm not understanding
right,
because
right.
you said that it's important for us to not impede on our freedom, right? And
Well, it's one of the usual conceptions, but I'm going to lay out what mine is. So the problem of determinism, as I understand it, is that something else conditions, causes, or makes me what I am in whatever mode that I'm acting, or for whatever end, or in whatever way that I am. That's the problem. That's what makes it unfree. That something else is imposing upon me my own character, or something within my own character which I cannot choose over, or which I cannot will over particularly. Obviously, the losing of restraints, of losing of all conditions, both internal and external, leaves me with nothing. So that leaves me with a concept that is not actually a concept. So people who say, oh, freedom is just complete absence of restriction, they're just wrong, because they're talking about nothing at all. That's not an idea, that's not a thought, it's meaningless. And when we talk about reality, well, we're talking about something real. We're talking about something meaningful. So what I would say about these people is they're wrong about what they think freedom is in the first place, because it's just nonsense. But there is something meaningful about freedom in the way that people want to say something is free. You know, when we want to say something is free because there's something we mean by it, something real. It can't be just a fiction or illusion. We are pointing out something very specific, which is not a quality which other things that don't have it, have. So what would that be? So if the problem of determinism is that something else causes me to be, or conditions me, or makes me be what I am, then freedom must be that which causes itself, conditions itself, or makes itself be what it is. So while determinism is an issue of other determination, freedom is an issue of self-determination. Because if I wasn't anything, then there would be no reason to choose to be anything, let alone engage in anything. So in order for me to be free, this requires that there actually be a specific way, a determinate way, to be free in general, such that I am the kind of being which can choose, and I cannot choose not in a random way, but in a meaningful way.
And I think what you're saying makes sense. There is a meaningful way in which people use the word freedom, and I get what you're saying when you mean by that. But at the end of the day, none of what you said was really made me reconsider my
Well, I'm not done.
view.
I'm just setting it up. I'm not done at all.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, please.
Right.
Please.
So the issue of freedom is self-determination. How does a thing make itself be the thing that it is? And is there a way in which things in general make themselves in general what they are and then specified individually into what they are? And the answer is actually yes. There is a way. Think about it this way, on the highest level. If you're an atheist or a theist, doesn't really matter. Call it God, call it the universe. It makes no difference here. Whatever the universe is, it is the domain in which all things are. It is a domain of being. It is a domain of existence, reality. There is no other thing than this. There's no other domain. So for the universe, which determines all other things, it would be the other which determines the things within it. There is no other to determine the universe. There's no other to the universe that makes the universe be the thing that it is, or the way that it is, in any manner. Now, you may say, well, what if the universe just happens to be the way that it is? It just is. There's no further reason. Well, in that, there is an implicit belief, or rather a requirement of reason implicitly, that though I don't know how the universe is determined, there is some underlying further reality which has determined that the universe just happens to be the way it is, even if it seems random. And it is random. It could be, because you can have determinate randomness. Indeterminate randomness is not the only one. As a matter of fact, indeterminate randomness requires determinate randomness. So then one would be pushed back into, well, if there's a determinate randomness making the universe just happen to be what it is with no further reason, what is making the determinate randomness be what it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As long as it's determinate, you have to have a, what's the word? Antecedent, you know,
Hmm.
a prior cause. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get what you're saying.
Yeah. So you can't just have a brute fact here. The brute facts always imply that there is something else that has determined it this way, even if you don't want to admit it. So in this
So
case,
you, so yeah, so what you're saying is determinism just can't explain the universe,
so
right?
yeah, yeah. So the determinism as something else causing it to be cannot hold. So whatever happens in the universe has to be belong to the universe itself. The universe has to be the one that makes itself what it is,
So
because
is the
it is.
universe, sorry,
Yeah,
is the
go ahead.
universe self-determinate?
Yeah.
Cool.
And so, since nothing else would make the universe what it is, and only it would be the source of being, it's a domain of being, and what is only in it, and only what is has causal efficacy or determining efficacy, then the universe has to be self determining, and that is what freedom is. Because, there's nothing else that is making or forcing the universe to be what it is.
Hmm. So the universe is fundamentally free
Yeah.
of all limitations.
Yeah, because there was nothing else that would limit it, that would cause it or bound it to be what it is.
But
Whatever bounds it has come from within it.
maybe it imposes its own limitations, just for the fun of it.
Well, that's what self-determination means. Self-determination is a limitation. So it's self-limitation.
But no, but then see, now we're getting into physics, right? Now
No, we're
because
not.
there's really, because there's physicists who say, who posit that the universe is expanding and then it's gonna contract again, right? That's what they say.
No,
No.
that has nothing to do with this. Like the nature of space and time hasn't even entered into this. It's just like on the categorical level that the universe is a domain of being. Even if you say, well, what if
Oh,
there's
I see. I
multiverses?
see. I see. I was just getting confused on the word. You're using word universe. I see. I see. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, okay. So you're saying that if there was a multiverse, that would still come into the domain of being,
Yeah, yeah. And then
right?
that would be the
Just,
true
okay.
universe, and they would have to
Right,
make
right, right.
itself.
Okay. Okay, okay, okay. No, I get what you're saying. And this does, you know, this does make it true that, for me at least, that not everything is determined. But, you know, at least in our day-to-day lives, I think probably determinism still holds true.
Sure, and I'm going to get there. So at least for the universe, you have the picture of a little bit of what self-determination looks like. So this is a little bit what freedom looks like, so that we might recognize where in our own life we might actually have that too.
Mm.
So that lays down the groundwork of freedom in the most abstract, basic sense, and not even completely, but I think so that lies, what is freedom? That's just a basic thing. Then we have another question. Well, what is the will? And most people will say, well, the will is just the capacity or faculty of choice. Well, that doesn't make any sense regarding what most people intend to say by saying, oh, I have free will, or it's my will. Because just merely having a choice according to what? You said earlier that you think that insofar as we will, like we're all driven by desires, like we're just compelled by them. So in that
Yeah.
case, to will would be just to go along with what is the strongest desire in me. But that's not what people mean by will, right? Because then that's not a choice. The will here becomes like just a gate that opens when a thing's strong enough to pass through.
Well, I
Whichever
just
one.
think that when people use the word will, I think that just people are mistaken about the, you know, how free it really is. I think it's an illusion, you know. I think uh I I think that you have to run with this concept of free will to run our lives. But I think ultimately that, yeah, it is driven by our desires.
Well, I'm going to problematize it. So that's not really how we work. Like our will is not merely a gate that opens to the strongest desire. When we talk about will, strangely enough, and it's strange that it's not obvious to us, but it's true. The will is not just the faculty of choice, because mere choice ends up being no choice. Like you said, like if it becomes just a choice immediately with desires, whatever desire is strongest and whichever one gets there first wins. And that's not a choice. That's like saying, like that you've made a choice, by a water droplet, dropping down faster than another, along a certain path. And that, that you made a choice because the first one that got there is the first one that got there. And it's not like, oh, I had chosen on the one that one first and I was betting on it. No, the first one that got there is the first one that wins, is the one that wins. Well, no shit. No, that's not a choice. And not only that, it's not like, oh, you get it and you're like, okay, this one won, I get it, and I'm going to take it. No, in this case, it gets there and it just keeps going. It just runs right through my open gate and keeps on going and just happens to carry me along with it. That doesn't fit any model of choice that people are talking about. And when we do choices, what we're talking about is I have some standard by which to choose the desires that are coming through. What I'm going to realize and actualize. So the will is really not just a faculty of choice, but actually it's a mode of thought.
So here's my issue, guys. So you said that the will is the mode of thought by which we sort through our desires, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, if I was to think about it from how I view it, I would say that when you're doing that sorting of desires, that is then driven by a higher order desire. I don't know, maybe.
I'll explain right
maybe
now
I'm wrong.
what the difference is. So
Yeah.
one is thinking is one of our desires. We like to be right. We like to know. When we can't know, it kind of pisses us off, and we don't like to be told that we're wrong. But when we can know and we can be right, we love it. We really do. And we seek it, and as much as we can. So reasoning is one of our desires. And, and we like to justify our choices. Insofar as people say, if you want to get other people to accept what you're doing or whatever, you try to give them some reason, which they should assent to. So we try to justify those things, and we try to justify them to ourselves as well. So it's not just, so the higher order desire that's being used here is our own reason. Not for this or that reason, but because if, for example, you say like, oh, my reason for, eating the burger is because I'm hungry. That's not actually an act of will. Because if you're hungry, you just naturally are led to eat, and whatever there is, you'll eat it, and you might just crave a burger right then, and you might eat it. And those are unconscious acts. We just kind of go along. It's like when I go to the fridge and I don't even know what I'm looking for. I just open it up. I look, and whatever is there, I'll take it and I'll eat it because I don't care what I'm eating. And those things, I'm not really judging anything. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not really deliberating. Deliberation only belongs to something in which I have a particularly rational choice on a purely rational concept. So something like health.
So
something like health, for example.
Exactly. So we can make it more rational. We can say, okay, I'm free this evening. I'm not really hungry. I can choose to go to a restaurant with my friends or whatever, or go to the gym and then make my own food.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And then
that would require more deliberation.
Yeah,
right?
But the one that requires actual deliberation, because in those you haven't put out the criteria of why would I choose one or the other. For the will, the criteria are its own products of reason. It is a mode of reasoning. So something like health, for example, is not something you derive from empirical experience. Health is a rational concept, purely a priori. That there is nothing that you can see, I see health, that's why I know health is. It requires reasoning about the empirical, but also it's a structure of a certain kind of being. So that when I think about health and I say, look, I could go and eat fast food, or I can hit the gym and then go home and make something healthy. And my measure here is health. And I say, okay, well, I value health. That is my higher order desire. That is like the product of my own will as willing. That is like me going along with my pure will. Then I choose to go to the gym or whatever. Or in this case, I go like, well, you know what? Really, I just want to enjoy. And this is another aspect of the will, actually. Happiness is another concept of the will. It's a pure a priori thing. Because what you experience is joy. Happiness is not just like this joy right now. Happiness is a state of being in general. It's an abstraction. And so the will has these kinds of things to measure its choices from. It doesn't just have any empirical measures. Those don't count as measures at all. Because if you don't have the higher order rational measure, you just have one desire pulling you along. Because through the will, you can have a desire that's stronger and a desire that's weaker. In direct relation, I want fast food, or I want to, go to the gym and eat something healthy. I want fast food more. But I can subvert that through the higher order desire of I want health more. Therefore, I will choose the thing that I immediately want less because it's going to lead to a thing that eventually I want more. So that's how the will works. And in its pure form, the will is just the capacity of myself to stand back from my own reasoning process, behold a concept in my mind, which is a pure concept, as my end, behold the way the world existentially is, empirically, notice the difference, and close the gap of that difference. Okay, man, you're muted.
I think that way of looking at things, I think that's still not free will like you were earlier describing it.
It's still not getting there. Yeah, it's still not there quite
Yeah.
yet. So I'm still building up to it. So the thing that clinches this is two things. One has to understand what my pure theoretical conceptual cognition is, which I can't explain to you here. It's too long. But I can tell you, like, the way reason works is a self-determining system, which basically mirrors the process of self-determination of the universe. So the universe is free. I notice in my own mind, in my own cognitive process, that the exact same relationships of self-determination are ongoing. That whenever, I think a pure thought, what is going on is that I am not appealing to some pre-given material. I'm not appealing to my senses. I am not appealing to anything spatial, temporal. It's not physical. It is a pure object of meaning, which determines itself in the domain of meaning. And I can see how that thing generates itself, generates its differences, and confirms itself, and shows its own identity as an object of cognition to me. And that's how I know that that thing has determined itself. There is no other that must be appealed to for what it is. And it is perfectly enclosed. There is no externality at all. So just as like the universe has no externality which would make it what it is, my reason also has no externality which would make it what it is. It's a tall order, yes, I know. It can be shown. It requires a little bit of work. In that I have my will. So my will can take that. The concept of myself is the pure abstraction of my own cognition. So I have like my capacity to think, and I can think my own thinking. And the immediacy of my own thinking is I think I am. And when I think I am, I have directed myself as a pure form of reason that is separate from the physical conditions of the world. I am of a kind which is not particular, but rather universal. I not only can determine myself in a universal mode abstractly, I can determine myself in particular and individual modes as well. So I can individuate myself, which is exactly part of the point of choice. Part of the point of choice is for me to individuate myself and specify myself within the world. So the will achieves freedom, finally, when the will wills itself. And the will wills itself by doing what? If the will is the difference and the difference of the gap between my rational ends as purely a priori rational ends, like happiness, health, and, the desire to like know truth and all those things, and the world, I see not only specific gaps, like, oh, I want health and I want, to eat food that's healthy, therefore I eat healthy food. That's only a finite way. But in doing so, what am I doing? The ultimate way that I want to be free is to secure my own freedom as being the will that I am. In order to be a free will, I have to be able to engage in free rationality, not be confused, not have false ideas, not be in a society in which I am forced by circumstances to not be able to have the time to reason or think and understand, and all that stuff. And so the will engages in the creation of an objective world in which I create communities and I create societies which are socially, culturally, and materially allowing for the production of my own free will, my own capacities to engage in that self-rationalization, self-understanding, and self-confirmation of these pure ends of reason, which will be integrated in my own life. Because my ultimate end as a rational being is to be free, is to self-determine, just self-determine in general. No specific self-determination, but just the specification of self-determination as such. And in order for me to do that, I do those things specifically. So I may be born, for example, with a tendency towards liking engineering. Or I may be born with a tendency towards liking art. And the problem with those is, well, if I just never question those, and I never ask them, like, do I really want to be an engineer? Do I really want to be an artist? And I just go along with those, I will be free, to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, I'm doing the thing because I enjoy it. But I've never really thought about, is that really what I really want? Is that really what I should want? And do I confirm that that is who I want to be? And only until the point in which I get to that point in which I make those kinds of metacognitions about myself and my reality, and that I understand my own reasoning process and confirm my own reasoning process to be a free reasoning process, which is not just also like my desires just being taken from somewhere else, which is making me what I am, rather than me making myself what I am. So until those conditions are established, I don't have free will, properly speaking. But when those conditions are established, I have literally the structure of the will, which is making itself be what it is, because it's setting up its own conditions. It's like a plant, which readies its own soil.
Right. So if I'm born with a tendency to play piano,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think to myself, no, do I want to do this? Let's go and try the guitar for a month. And then you realize, wow, the guitar, I'm born for this. This is my calling. Like, fuck the piano. I thought I was good at that. I'm way better at this. Let's switch over. I'm enjoying this way more. Would you then say that I've made myself?
No.
Or am I still bound by externality?
You're still bound by externalities in that case. You're just being driven by a desire which you don't understand, and you don't see it under a rational principle.
See, but I think that the scenario you described earlier, where you're doing the metacognition, you're thinking about your own desires or your own tendencies, right?
Yeah, but you have to do it under
I
a
think
rational principle. You can't just do it under a given desire, because then you're not choosing. All that's happening is, well, obviously the stronger desire will always win, because you've made desire the measure. But the desire is not a rational measure.
Well, here's how I see it. Whatever rational measure you use, right? It will always have a desire backing the way that you're rationalizing things, right?
Well, yes, because you want to desire reason, and the rational person obviously desires reason. And why do you desire reason? Because it has the ultimate form of freedom. I mean, you know very well that if you meet stupid people in life, they are not very free. They are confused. They believe in falsehoods. They are taken advantage of by people who are, charlatans, unscrupulous, all these other things. To be free requires that you better know what the facts of the world actually are. You better know what the facts of your own reasoning actually are. If in your account of freedom you don't involve that, you're not free at all. You're just being taken for a ride by something else. I mean, I can give you an example of what I mean by a self-determining form of reason. And actually, it goes well with this scenario.
All right.
So, like, take cause. A cause is that which produces an effect. Would that be like understandable to you?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it understandable to you if I say a cause is that which produces an effect?
A cause is that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an everyday thought on this.
Seems tautological. How do they say it?
Well, it's not tautological. It's just definitional. It's analytic.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So, what makes a cause? It produces the effect. No cause, no effect. The cause is the condition of the effect. Right?
Yes.
Right. Now, on the categorical level, maintain your mind on this. Don't think about an example of cause and effect, but think about cause and effect as such. That on the categorical level, if there is no effect, then I cannot have a cause. Because a cause is only a cause because it produces an effect. If I claim there is a cause, but there is no effect, then the cause I have is not a cause.
Right.
Right. So this inverts the logic. Now the effect becomes the condition of the cause, and the cause becomes the conditioned the effect of the effect. So the effect becomes the cause of the cause becomes the effect of the effect, and they reverse.
Okay.
And we're back again to cause and effect, and we're stuck in a loop. Cause is a cause as far as an effect. It's the condition of the effect. No condition,
Right.
no conditioned. But then
Right.
we see that the effect is obviously the condition for the cause being a cause, then it becomes the cause, and the cause becomes the effect. In this loop, to understand this,
Okay.
in this loop of understanding, there is nowhere else to go. And there's nowhere else to appeal to for what we're understanding here. Like, this is a closed circuit of meaning. And this structure of cause and effect, which actually just invert each other, is what necessity is. Or, what you might call absolute cause as well. It's a cause. The cause, through the effect, causes itself to be a cause. The effect, through the cause, affects itself to be the effect. They make themselves through each other. I'm sorry, I could not understand that.
I couldn't really understand that either.
I'm sorry.
If you can like
How is that?
paraphrase that.
This is
How
like
is that?
a same problem you might have with like poets and poetry. Like poetry is that which are, poetry is that.
This has nothing to do with poetry. What I said is fairly straightforward, conceptual. There's no metaphors here. I'm not using verbal flourish.
I was just saying how does the
Same sort of like wordplay where like poetry is created by.
Okay, man. You keep talking. I'll keep muting you. Anyways, go on. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying how are you going to relate this to our will?
Okay, well, you see the structure of that and how like the cause produces its effect and the effect produces the cause. This is a structure of self-determination. The cause is making itself the cause through its own consequence. The consequence of a cause is the effect, and then the effect becomes also the cause, the antecedent of the cause itself. So that the cause causes itself.
Okay. So
So the
what you're saying
will,
then is that this is analogous to our will.
yeah, and so the will in this case, when you have the will that understands its own necessities of rationality, creates a world in which those rationalities, it is the cause, produces an effect of a world in which education exists for a person to be rationally educated, to gain rational comprehension, a world of certain culture, a world of certain institutions that guarantee these things, and therefore regenerates itself and ensures that it is produced as a free will. So the will wills itself, which is a self-willing, which is exactly what free will is. It is a self-determination of the will to be what it is, according to its own nature, not according to another.
So you're saying because we have schools and because there are people who want to educate other people, that's who you think that's the manifestation of a self.
Well, we
How
have
what
schools
did
and
you say?
education, all these other things, because,
Self-determined.
yeah, we have school, education, states, institutions, society, culture, because these are the ways in which the will has ensured that it is produced as the will. So the will has determined itself to be what it is. So given the structure of freedom, given the structure of the will, we can see that these two align, and therefore free will is like consequent to it, just as a structural syllogism.
I mean, I've never heard this
I told you never heard this.
definition or conception.
I did tell
Um,
you you'd never hear this.
I can't really, disagree with your analysis, but I'll just say that this is not what people really mean by free will
No, I think
or
this is what
determinism.
people really mean by free will. They just don't know it. Like once you understand this, it's just like, yeah, that is what we're trying to get at. It's the rational form of what you try to get at. I mean, obviously, the average person doesn't have this specifically in mind, but they're intuiting something that goes along with this very well.
Why don't you read the chat and respond to these people?
Yeah, that's
What
poetry. Is
they
just
say.
saying with circular reasoning. So what? We've already established that if reality is the domain of being, there wouldn't be another domain from which determination comes. So guess what? Reality makes reality real. The universe makes itself what it is. Of course it's circular. That's the nature of what it is to be. Like there's no problem with it. People say, "Oh, it's circular," as if there's a problem with it. There is no problem with it.
But but don't they say circular reasoning is fallacious?
Well, yeah,
There's
what's the
different
problem with
kinds
it?
of
like when you say that, what's the problem with it specifically?
there's different kinds of circular reasoning.
Yeah, this would be called virtuous circularity. But like the thing is, most people just say, "Oh, circular reason is fallacious." They don't know why. Just like they say, "Oh, contradictions are bad." They don't know why. They just say them as if this is supposed to mean something. Well, if you don't know what it means, it's just saying it doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean, contradictions are bad because
I will buy you a coffee if you know why a contradiction is bad. I'll send you one of those like buy me a coffee things.
dude, I'm not as good with words as you are, but
No,
contradiction is bad because you can't have something and then say that it's not there at the same time
why not?
without 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 lying. You know, you can't you can't not lie when you say that you have $50 in your pocket and then in your left pocket and then it's not there.
No, that's not what a contradiction
Maybe
is.
that's a bad example.
Yeah, that is a bad example because the logical contradiction is just like a brute immediate contradiction. It's like saying I have $50 in my pocket and I don't have $50 in my pocket. Well, which is it? Do you or do you not? You're like I have both. I do and I do not.
Well, it's
Well, the
okay.
problem with that is not lying.
A contradiction is bad if you're okay. Maybe this is what you were looking for. A contradiction is bad if you're making a syllogism
Right,
because
but
then
why?
because if one of your premises contradicts the other, right? Then only one of them can be true.
No, so you
That
use
means that
this
what?
time you use a circular definition. You know, a contradiction is bad because it contains a contradiction. Well, yeah, but what's wrong about it?
Yeah, I'm getting to it. I'm saying
Okay.
that because it's contradictory, that means that only one of them can be true, and if only one of them can be true, then that
Why?
means at least one of them is false, which means
Well,
that your syllogism is wrong, because
uh-uh.
your syllogism can't have wrong premises. Is that right?
No, that's not why. Because there's no rule in logic that says, you know, only one of them has to be true. The reason we say only one of them has to be true is because we say contradiction is wrong. So you're using something that's a conclusion from a contradiction, or rather
A
against, like,
contradiction is a pair of two propositions. A pair of two propositions in which one of the propositions is the negation of the other, right? That's what a contradiction is. Right?
yeah.
Okay, so if it's the case that I'm making a syllogism, it's got three premises and a conclusion, and premise A and premise B are in direct negation of each other, and I'm saying that this is a true logical syllogism, then one of them has to be false. One of them, in fact, both of them might be false, but it has to be the case that at least one of them is false.
You still haven't explained why. You just say that one of them has to be true and the other has to, but this
No,
comes
I'm saying,
about because we
if
reject contradiction.
I'm saying if one of them is true, then the other one has to be false because it's direct negation.
No. Okay, so again, like, this is a conclusion that only comes because we already reject contradiction.
No, okay, okay.
So we say
Let me give you an example.
we say one of them has to be true, the other one has to be false because contradiction is already rejected. But why do we reject contradiction?
Look, if I say that my contradiction is X and not X, that's my contradiction, right? And I'm not saying that this is the case. If it's the case that X is true, then not X has to be false because it's not X.
No, okay, well, this is the thing. In a contradiction, that's not a problem because the contradiction says X is true and it is false. It's not saying if X is true, then X is false, cannot be true. It's saying X is true and it is false. But why do we reject contradiction?
dude, I'm sorry. I think I explained it pretty well.
No, you
I might
still
be
haven't told
wrong.
me. You've appealed to contradiction's rejection to tell me why contradiction is wrong, but you haven't told me what is wrong about
If
contradiction.
I
Why do we
okay,
reject it?
okay, okay, okay. If my okay, let's say okay, if we agree that by definition the format of a contradiction is X and not X, right?
Yep.
Let's say that X is I have two watermelons in my kitchen right now, right? Not X would be I don't have two watermelons in my kitchen right now, right? So if now I'm not saying this is the case, I'm saying if now let's just say that you grant me that it is true that there are two watermelons in my kitchen right now, then not X is false, like
Okay.
necessarily so, right?
No, but the syllogism doesn't say that. The syllogism says, I do have two watermelons and I don't have two watermelons. It's not an if. You're changing the syllogism, and that's not telling me what the problem is. You're saying, well, I want to say that if one is true, the other one has to be false. But the contradiction states the opposite. The contradiction says it's true and it's false. What is the problem with contradiction? Why do we reject it?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you just said.
So you're changing it from one type of syllogism to another. The contradictory syllogism just states
I
X
never,
and
I
not
never
X.
I never told you what kind of syllogism I was using.
Well,
I just said,
yeah, you change it
I
from
just said if
X
you're
and not
using
X, and then you change it to a hypothetical,
no
and you make it the
X and
rule of
not X,
inference.
X and not X. I'm just defining a contradiction when I tell you when I'm saying X and not X. I'm saying that that's how I define it, and that's the format of a contradiction. And if that's the format of a contradiction, and you're saying that what was the thing?
That one of them holds
The
true, then the other one's
that
automatically false.
that the variable that you're negating the variable and the variable holds true,
Right, but then you
right?
see that you're
Then
not making an argument against the contradiction. You've changed the rule of the game. The contradiction
no
is
no no
X and not X. And then
no
you
no no
say,
no.
but, and then you change,
Now
you
that I've
say,
defined now that
okay,
I've
like,
defined the contradiction and how logic applies to it, right? Now we go back to the syllogism, right? Where there's two premises that contradict each other.
All
Then
right, how's it going, guys? Back.
then you're gonna have to say
This
if
is
one of the
different.
premises is true, then the other one is false, which makes your syllogism wrong, which is why contradictions are bad.
no, that's not the case. So the contradiction just states X and not X. You can't change it to that if X, then clearly not X, not X. Because that's a whole different syllogism. The contradictory syllogism is just X and not X. It's saying both of them are the case. You can't change it to like if one is the case, then the other one clearly is not the case. You've already changed, and you're using the implicit rejection of contradiction to tell me what contradiction's problem is. But I'm asking, why are you rejecting
X and not X
contradiction?
is not a X and not X is not a syllogism.
Okay, well,
I'm not.
it is a contradictory statement. It can be turned into a
Right.
syllogism. It doesn't matter. The thing is, you're now changing it, already implicitly denying contradiction. But I'm asking, what is the problem with contradiction? Why are you denying it?
Okay, you know what? I can't seem to answer the question. Why don't you tell me?
Okay, well, the reason is it's unintelligible. That's the problem with contradiction. The reason we deny contradiction is because if you tell you it's X and not X, what am I telling you? I can't determine what I'm even telling you about. The specificity of X may be one thing. The specificity of non-X may be many things, maybe another specific things. But if I tell you it's both, and these two things are logically incompatible, what am I telling you? You don't know, and I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just speaking gobbledygook. That's the problem of contradiction, that it's unintelligible.
I thought
It's
that you
it's
were
not.
asking me to explain why it was unintelligible. That's why I was doing the whole.
No, even then, you didn't say why it's unintelligible. Saying like, well, it has to be one or the other is not telling me why it's unintelligible. It's just appealing to the law of identity, which is the implicit reason and also the explicit reason for why the law of non-contradiction exists and why contradictions must be rejected. Either the thing is it itself or it is not itself. But that doesn't tell me or anyone why it has to be itself or not itself. The answer explicitly is because it's unintelligible otherwise. Most people don't know this. Most people can't tell me what the problem of contradictions is. Like, oh, contradiction is bad. The same with circularity. They don't know why the circularity is bad.
Why is circularity bad?
Well, the reason circularity is bad normally is because you're basically going like, A is because of B. Well, why is B? Because of A. And these are supposed to be grounding reasons. One of those is supposed to ground the other. But if they grounded themselves mutually, you're just going in a circle and it's empty. It's also the problem with analytic, immediate identities. In which well, why is the thing it is? Well, because it is what it is. It's by definition, A equals A. No further argument. There's no explanation there. No reason that can be given. The same thing when people say, well, why is empiricism true? Well, because empiricism is true. How do I verify that empiricism is true? I use empiricism. The problem with the circularity is that they don't really make intelligible anything. They just reaffirm the very thing that was in question.
Oh, but then that guy was saying that you were using circular reasoning, and then you said that there's no problem with it.
Yeah, there's no problem with the circular reasoning I'm using. One, circular reasoning as such is not a problem. It's vicious circular reasoning that is a problem. Or, circular reasoning that is just so immediate that it tells you nothing. Because when you ask for a reason, you want a reason. You don't just want a repetition of the exact same thing over and over. But the circular reasoning I'm using, I explain to you why it has to be circular. There is no other place for determination to come from, so the determination has to come from itself, like just logically consequent. Has to be that way. Otherwise, it's unintelligible. But this is intelligible. Not only that, in the example, cause and effect.
If you could very briefly, just tell me again why the determination has to come from, like you said earlier, cause and effect. It has to come from within those two things.
Are you going to point to anything? Is there anything else you can point to from within that circuit of what it means to be a cause and what it means to be effect that you need to point to anything else? Do you need to invoke gravity? No. Do you need to invoke neurons? No. Do you need to invoke space? No.
If we've defined it so that a cause is a cause because it brings about an effect, and vice versa or whatever, and this creates this, thing where the antecedent keeps flipping or whatever, that's fine. But I'm still not connecting the dots between this conception of cause and effect to,
It's a self-determining structure. It's self-determining. There's nowhere else to go. The same thing is its antecedent and consequence. That is a structure of self-determination. It makes itself what it is.
So you're saying because the antecedent is flipping that it's self-determining.
Well, the consequent antecedent are the exact same thing. The cause literally makes itself be a cause through setting the effect. And the effect is also the effect of the cause precisely by, setting the cause. These things mutually set each other. And through each other just set themselves. So it's just a circle. Back again. Cause has an effect. Through the effect, it is the cause. Confers itself as the cause.
Okay. And this actualizes itself when you have a desire for self, whatever, thinking, and then you make a school that teaches other people how to do it.
Yeah, and you confirm yourself. And that's all it is. And yeah, sure, in the way that I've stated, this seems only like a hypothetical that, I've just defined this so. But there's a way to show that this is not just some subjective definition that we make up. There is a way to show that these are actually like real structures that can be built up objectively. It's not just like, oh, I decided to define it this way. Or we just happen to collectively use it this way. The Hegelian philosophy has something that is current philosophy, not modern, because current philosophy is not modern at all. Current philosophy can't even dream of. It has true concepts. They're not subjectively defined. They can be objectively checked. Just like how you can have like a true theorem in mathematics, like irrelevant of what someone subjectively wants operations to be. The same way that a tree grows itself. A concept determines itself to be what it is, regardless of what I want it to be. So in this view, like there's a lot of things that people are just wrong about. Not only lay people, but even people who call themselves philosophers are just dead wrong. Almost the entire discussion on free will is completely based on fictions. Both sides are wrong. They both misunderstand what they're talking about. They don't understand what the will is. They don't understand what freedom is. They're the ones who are being subjective. They're like, oh, I think the will is this. I think freedom is that. And they're like, well, and according to that, this person doesn't make any sense. And this doesn't make sense, or this makes sense. Well, but the question is the thing really what I say it is? Or is it not? And how can I know? How do I even know?
So how do you know that your definitions correspond to reality?
Because you don't start with any subjective position. You start from a semantically minimal position. You start from something completely unmediated, and you construct from there. And your constructions are objective constructions. It's like building with Lego blocks. If you ever done that, they snap only in a certain way. Thought only constructs in a certain way. It's not based on my whim. It's not based on like what I want to believe about it. It only has a certain structure. And the point of it is, in thinking, I found out what that structure is. But I have to be a very careful thinker. I have to like keep myself and my ideas externally out of it.
You realize what you're claiming right now, right?
Yes, I'm claiming absolute truth. It is not crazy. It is actual. The German idealists did it. Hegel perfected it. It is absolute truth.
You're saying right now that you have the objectively correct stance on everything.
Yes, I do.
I mean, see, now we're getting to something interesting.
Well, yeah, look, you can laugh, but do you have an objectively correct stance on everything? No.
No.
And in this case, it takes one to know one.
I mean, you know what, dude? That's big ups to that, because this is the first time I've ever heard a philosopher say something like this. That's what's up. Fuck all these other guys, I'm right.
No, yeah, like Hegel not only says it, he proves it. Unquestionably. So if you want the answer to life, the universe, and everything, check this motherfucker out.